I have covered a lot of companies in this channel. And for companies that fail, one recurring theme is clear. They stop caring about their customers or degrade their quality so bad that no one wants to go there. But today we're covering a company that was loved by its customers but somehow failed. Even now, when people think about their hamburgers, they have nothing but good things to say. But looks like customer satisfaction is only one part of the equation. When you look at its history, Fuddruckers kept making one mistake over and over again. That's why there are only 64 Fuddrucker locations today, down from around 200 at its peak. So, how did a company that had the potential to take on giants like McDonald's and Burger King disappear in obscurity without ever experiencing true growth? This is the story of the failed potential of Fuddruckers. The story of Fuddruckers starts with one man's disappointment in hamburgers that were sold during his time. Philip J. Romano felt like the world needed better hamburgers. Instead of sitting around and complaining about the lack of restaurants that sold decent hamburgers, he decided to take matters into his own hands and start a restaurant that did just that. Philip started his business in 1979 in San Antonio. He found a location where there was a bank previously and converted it into a restaurant. Romano initially named the restaurant Freddy Fuddruckers, and before you wonder, no, it was not named after anyone. According to a rumor, Romano named his restaurant after a fictional airline. He wanted to make sure that the restaurant made the hamburger as fresh as possible. I mean, what would be more fresh than your own butcher? Freshly on-site grounded meat along with freshly baked buns that were baked on the premise, right? Along with this, dishes in the restaurant were offered with lots of fresh tomatoes, onions, lettuce, and vats of cheese sauce. Let's just say the food was not just tasty, but it was healthy as well. Well, as healthy as hamburgers could get, I guess. As the service and quality of food the restaurant provided were top-notch, the prices were also pretty high. It was more of a high-end fast food restaurant, but regardless of the price, it was a hit because the people loved the food. By 1988, Fuddruckers had 150 chains. 1988 was also the year Romano, the man behind the concept of the restaurant, left the chain with the goal to build some other businesses. It had almost been a decade since he started the business, and according to him, he felt like he had done everything he could for the concept. He felt like it was time for him to move on from Fuddruckers. Fuddruckers was Romano's passion project, and with him, along with the original vision he had for the company gone, it was as if the chain lost the stability it had while Romano was still with the company. I say this because by the looks of it, one of the major reasons for the chain's decline over time is due to the constant change in ownership. New ownership meant new management, and that meant new priorities. If this happens constantly, the business is bound to be unstable in many ways. Romano started drifting away from the company long before he left the company. At first, the company went public to be able to fund its expansion. This happened in 1983. In 1985, he stepped down as the CEO of the company. By the end of the 1980s, as Fuddruckers was growing rapidly and they were opening new store locations left and right, Romano left the company completely by selling the last of his ownership in the company. The trouble in paradise had not started yet. Along with the company owning the restaurant locations themselves, they also started franchising. The company decided to merge with Buc-ee International in 1988, after Romano left. This ownership was probably the one in which Fuddruckers thrived the most. It was under Buc-ee International that the company saw huge expansion and had almost 200 stores. They also started expanding internationally during this time. Unfortunately, none of their attempts at international expansion were a success. At first, they tried to expand in Canada. The first Canadian Fuddruckers opened in the mid-1980s. Their first Australian store opened in Brisbane's Eagle Street Pier shopping centre in November 1993. Around this time, they also started expanding in Asia. In 1994, Fuddruckers opened in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Their attempt at expansion in Argentina in 1988 also failed. Most of these expansions were not company-owned, but rather done through franchises. Safe to say, none of those stores were a success. They also closed within a couple years because of not being able to make any profit. The business's main slogan was "World's Greatest Hamburger," and it stayed true to its business for a decade or so into the business, but things started to change after the new ownership. What made Fuddruckers so great was their quality and freshness. Maybe it was the cost-cutting measures of the new ownership, but by the mid-1990s, there was a low emphasis on Fuddruckers hamburgers being the greatest. Previously, to show people what made their hamburgers so great, they had an on-site butcher who cut meat for the patties, and the customers could actually see that. Along with this, they also baked their buns on-site, and customers could see that process as well. I feel like eating a hamburger at Fuddruckers was more of an experience. You got to see the process, saw how fresh their products were, and it tasted great. After all this, you could be the judge if their products were great or not. In 1997, there were some changes in the company that was managing Fuddruckers. This meant more instability. The company split and a new company, Unique Casual, was formed, and this company managed Fuddruckers. By the looks of it, Fuddruckers was not much of their priority, and in November 1998, it was sold to King Cannon, which was a private company owned by Michael Cannon. Cannon was a popular figure in the restaurant business world, and there was hope that he could make the necessary changes required to make Fuddruckers dominate the fast food industry. He saw the potential in the business. He made the necessary renovations, expanded the menu, and also invested in marketing the restaurant. The business was doing good. It was not dominating the fast food industry, but was staying afloat. Their food was well loved among the customers. It was again sold to Austin-based Magic Brands. Then the 2008 financial crisis happened. This was not a flourishing business, which meant the crisis did not help. On top of it, the restaurant sold its products at a slightly higher price as they were providing their customers with better quality than the competitors, so the price was justified. During a crisis like this, people become price sensitive, rather than product sensitive. While people are struggling with their financial situation, they will certainly go for cheaper products. This is what happened here as well. As Fuddruckers' products were more on the expensive side, their customers, who could previously afford their food, could no longer do so. So what did the customers do? They switched from eating at Fuddruckers to some other cheaper alternatives. This was a big blow to their business. Along with Fuddruckers, other businesses were struggling as well, and in 2010, Magic Brands, who owned Fuddruckers, filed for bankruptcy. Initially, it was sold to a private equity firm, Tavistock, for $40 million, but just a month after this, it was again sold to another restaurant chain, Lubys, for $61 million. Lubys, being a restaurant chain, looked like the perfect fit for Fuddruckers, and it looked like it would gain some much-needed stability to revive itself. Lubys did everything it could to make the business work. Lubys was a place that was preferred by adults, and Fuddruckers, since its initial years of business, had marketed its business more towards kids. The combination of these two seemed like a family was getting the best of both worlds. With the acquisition of Lubys, there was much hope that Fuddruckers' potential in the fast food world would be fully utilized. But the thing is, Lubys was already financially struggling way before acquiring Fuddruckers. Spending $61 million to acquire Fuddruckers and an additional $11 million to acquire Cheeseburger in Paradise did not help their already bad financial position. Both the acquisitions were also not performing up to their mark. Cheeseburger in Paradise was quickly shut down, and their stores were also converted into Fuddruckers. By 2018, Fuddruckers had not made any progress, and the sales were constantly dropping. Many stores that were not performing well closed during this time. Lubys was having trouble staying afloat, and it looked like its end was nearing. Then COVID-19 happened, and it was like the final nail in the coffin. Unable to manage the loss the pandemic had caused, Lubys decided to liquidate its assets in June 2020. With Lubys out of the picture, the future of Fuddruckers once again seemed uncertain. Just when everyone was thinking that this might be the end of Fuddruckers, it was saved again. This time, the savior was Nicholas Perkins. Perkins is the owner of Black Titan Franchise Systems. Before buying the ownership of Fuddruckers for an estimated $18.5 million, Black Titan Franchise Systems already owned and operated 13 Fuddruckers. Fuddruckers' ownership makes Nicholas Perkins the first African American with 100% ownership of a national burger franchise. It looks like someone does care about Fuddruckers after all. Fuddruckers had 92 locations while it went into Perkins' ownership. Nicholas Perkins, in a statement, said, "As a Fuddruckers franchisee, I have a vested interest in ensuring that all Fuddruckers franchises have the resources, infrastructure, and operational and marketing support they need to maximize their return on investment." As I mentioned before, if you still ask a lot of people about Fuddruckers, they will tell you just how amazing their burgers were. I feel like it was not their food or service that contributed to their decline. The constant change in ownership and the instability that came along with that have played a huge role in its decline. It almost feels like Fuddruckers never got the chance it deserved to thrive in the company it could be. If the visions of the original owner, Philip J. Romano, are kept alive for the company, there still might be a chance for Fuddruckers to make a name for themselves in the industry. For now, it looks like it has been saved from extinction. Only time will tell if Nicholas Perkins can revive it. Have you ever tried Fuddruckers? What do you think about it? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. See you all in the next episode.